Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of They Call Me Coach. This week, we are super fortunate. We are stretching our reach across the pond, and we're going to welcome this week's guest, Shane Howard. Coach, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. I thought we were going to have like a 5-hour delay there because there's quite a big difference between us, but it seems pretty tight right now.
Yeah, seems to be good.
Cool. So, as I start every week's show, I remind people that this is. I think we can call ourselves a magazine show. We come on for 30 minutes every week on a Wednesday. We chew the breeze with some of the best coaches, some of the best minds in the game of basketball. And this week's no different. We're not a journalistic show. We're not trying to uncover secrets. But what we do try and do is we try and bring some value. Hopefully, we bring some knowledge, we bring some experiences, we tell some stories, and ultimately we want to try and bring some value. And if we can, we'd love to entertain as well. So this week, I'm gonna do what we do a little bit differently because I'm going to start kind of I call it a conversation, but I'm leading the conversation. I'm steering it where I want it to go, and I try and know enough about my guests that I can kind of draw some things out based on what I know. And every single week, every guest has given us a little bit more than I intended or than I expected. So yeah, you've got a good body of work to follow, Shane. But I know you won't let us down.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the kind words.
Well, look, Shane, we met. I was trying to remember what year it was. We met roughly 2009, 2010. I'm not going to try and tell your story, but what I'd like you to do is if you could just share with me your journey up until around 2010, and then the rest of the journey we'll try and eke that out as the show goes on.
Yeah, so I'm pretty open about my journey. So I'll take you in a quick way. I'll take you all the way back to my childhood. So I was born and raised here in a town called Bowling Green, Kentucky. Born in less fortunate circumstances. Actually moved 17 times the first 18 years of my life. um, Different points where I was homeless at different points, either because I couldn't go home or it wasn't the best situation for me to go home. Um, Through that, kind of worked in a professional aspect and did some different things. Um, Blessed to have some kids and be a dad, and those things. Grew up with ADHD. As a youngster, a lot of those different things. I graduated 154th out of 187 in high school, which is not obviously not good. um, Got back, again in the professional life. Went to university. Didn't really navigate through that. School really wasn't for me. And then had a dream. And when the economy tanked in 2008, 2009, um, I decided I wanted to do something different. I was working in the finance and automotive sales part of the world, and decided I wanted to do something different. So I did that. Long story short, I took the last $1,500 I had to my name, kind of bet on myself, and ironically enough, the start of that journey, bet on some basketballers from the UK, and that's up until when you and I met there. So that's a brief, and you can tap back into any of that. I'm absolutely open to talk about any of that. So
So, Coach, explain why I always refer to you as Coach because you do have a kind of basketball kind of background connection. So how did that bit kind of fit into the next bit of that journey?
yeah, so leading into that, I when the economy tanked, I took a pretty significant pay cut and humbled things and took a an assistant high school coaching job with a friend of mine that I grew up with, while also working in a special education room as an aide, working with middle school kids with learning disabilities and physical and mental disabilities and those things. And then got a college coaching job after that. Then decided that really wasn't what I wanted to do. So the company that I started was what was known as custom college recruiting, and we helped high school age athletes, what ended up being in 53 different countries around the world, helping them come to the United States to play sport. And where you and I actually met, we actually met face to face down in Southampton. I had gotten invited over by an absolutely legend and fantastic lady, Bev Guyman, invited us over to come and speak at a coach's clinic, and that didn't work out, and that's a whole nother story in itself. But it did work out in a way. We were able to meet so many different people. People like you were able to see that, hey, this guy just isn't a fast, loud talking American. He's actually a very genuine guy with a good intent.
Well, you are a fast talking, loud American, but that doesn't undermine
I'm,
all the
I'm
other actually.
I'm a big guy too. I'm a big guy
Yeah.
too. So yeah, and now you and I are a lot alike, right? So now
This is
last time you
true.
saw me,
This is true.
I had a little more hair. I had a little more hair. So
Yeah, but your kids were a lot younger then as well. So, well, your kids might not
yes,
even have been born yet, right? So, yeah, we all had a
yeah,
lot more hair then.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
tell me a little bit about um, the journey into creating custom college recruiting, because I know at that time we had been dealing with lots of different companies. We had been working with juniors um, in the game of basketball, kids who aspired to go and play in the States, that wanted that American experience, that believed at the time that they were serious about basketball and maybe wanted to look at basketball as a career, and they felt, as do a lot. This is still the case now. They felt like a lot of kids do all over the world, that the best place for them to develop their skills and learn their trade was going to be in the States. And you came into a very crowded marketplace at that time. Um, Tell me in your own. I don't want to feed you, so tell me in your own words. What did you see in that marketplace at that time, and what did you think that you could do differently?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair question. What I saw, and I'll try to be as positive as I can with it, but what I saw were a lot of things there that were for the purpose of helping athletes access opportunities. But the underlying piece of that was there were a lot of people who were giving bad information, maybe not necessarily intentionally, but because they just didn't know, right? So there's again sometimes, and you and I obviously we're, you're like a brother, so it's okay. Like we can we can communicate, and England doesn't feel that far away when we have a conversation or when we sit down and meet again, and sit down and share a pizza. It's not, we don't feel like we've been that far apart. But for most of the world, even in the UK, even though you're really close, America seems so far away, and there is a lack of information flow and a lack of understanding of what actually is happening here and those kind of things. So, I saw that, and it's going to sound really cliche, but it was just be honest, don't offer any guarantees, tell people the truth, tell people the realities, and just allow them to be put in a situation that will help them access as many opportunities as possible. If it works, great. You've spent a little bit of money to access something and you've gotten it, and now you've gotten thousands and thousands of dollars in scholarship money in those opportunities. If it doesn't work, then again, you spend a little bit of money, but at least you know that you don't have to live with regrets. You can say, hey, I did everything that I could do. And that was always what we wanted to do with that, was provide the best quality service. And again, with the most realistic expectation, and that's none. There is no expectation. You do it and your talents will speak for themselves. Yes, we could get you in front of college coaches and those kind of things, but ultimately that talent has to speak for itself. So just be authentic, treat people fair, treat people right. We did a lot of things. There was a lot of, in the early days, there, even not even in the early days, even as we went on, there were, you have an athlete that comes to you and he's got, home circumstances that were probably similar to mine growing up, and financially he can't afford it, and that if he doesn't get this service or use this service, you do what you can, and you do the right thing. I live by a motto of doing the right thing is always the right thing. And it just is right. You don't have to question it. It comes to you, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the way it happens, but that's how we did things, and that's why we were able to do what we did.
I mean, look, I think you're probably being overly diplomatic. I mean, my recollection of things, and this is going back like 10 years, and in some ways things have changed a lot, and in other ways they haven't changed at all. There were a lot of
Correct.
companies out there promising kids that they could get them, into a good program in the US, whether that was a prep school program, high school, or college, and parents and kids were paying thousands of pounds and then ending up in really poor situations, having really bad experiences, and regularly coming home within 6 to 12 months because the promises that they were made by the companies that they were working with weren't accurate at all. Um,
Sure.
so I think you were being overly diplomatic. I don't think there's a need for that. We could do another show where we just talk about what does it mean to go to the States, because I believe one of the refreshing things that I found when I first met you was that you said what you just said there, that there are no guarantees, that we are going to do our best to help your talent be seen by as many people as possible, but then it's your talent that's going to speak up and your character that's going to determine whether or not you get the opportunity. What you do with the opportunity once you've got it, that again, that's up to you and the program that you're in. But that's not the same message that was coming from um, some of those other companies.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And I'm being diplomatic. It's trying not to, look, the reality of it is what it is there are a lot of people out there that take advantage of parents. They see, you see a parent that's willing to drive from Leeds to Southampton for a tournament, or for a day to come do. You realize that, people see that, hey, this parent is, I don't want to say desperate, but willing to do whatever they need to do, or they feel like they need to do, to access opportunities. So, there are people that prey on that. There's agents out there that prey on that. The best thing that most people can understand in this thing called life and sports and college recruiting is, we have a saying here in the United States, and it's ironic that I'm saying this on a British podcast, but there's only two things in life that are guaranteed, and that's death and taxes. And it's though, that's it, right? Nothing else is guaranteed. And but even though people know that, some people look for the people who tell them what they want to hear. I'm absolutely not that person in life that when you come to with a personal problem or business or sports, the last thing I'm going to tell you is probably what you want to hear. My goal, and it's in my inherent nature, just to tell you what you need to hear.
Okay, so now I want us to fast forward a little bit and talk about the growth of custom college recruiting, because even so when we first met, I guess you were like in a year into the company, not maybe not even a year.
Yeah,
You know,
not even a
really
year,
early on
about
in the
6 months. Yeah.
yeah, really early on in the journey, and you know, like you say, some things that you happened but made a really good you made good use of that time in the UK, and then within about 5 years, to work out which country you were in and what time zone was seemed to kind of accelerate pretty quickly. Tell me, how did you get from 2009 to working in over 53 countries?
So again, so when I visited the UK, that was the only time I really had. That's the only time I had ever been out of the United States at that point. And it definitely opened my eyes to see that there. Ironically, there's actually things about my upbringing um, that that are parallel to people living outside of the United States trying to achieve what is known as the American dream. So to come here to have access to some of these things, and look, you know, I'm not here to debate what country's better. We've got our issues and our problems that we could talk about for 100 days. But what I knew and what I saw when I came to your country was a lot of the stigma or the things that we think we know about another country or how we're going to be perceived are not the case. Now, I did have a run in with your head person of the basketball world when I was at there, and that person was against people coming to the United States, and that person was against people like me coming over. Good thing for me and good thing for a lot of the young adults that we helped. I'm pretty hard headed and I don't listen. That's the hard headed American coming out in me, right? So with that, what I saw was there's a need for people, and a majority of people don't care where you come from. They don't care what the color of your skin is. They don't care what your voice sounds like. What they care about is an initial meeting and a developing sense of authenticity. So, authenticity for me is what has allowed me to accelerate that. So, we did the UK. We worked in that. Had some other countries kind of bleeding in through Europe. A lot of the scenarios you talked about where somebody had spent 2 or 3 4,000 pounds with someone and it wasn't working out, and what do we do? We need some help. We're not getting anything. A lot of those things, and then we had an opportunity and got invited over to Australia. Took on a whim. It's again one of those weird entrepreneurial stories to where I didn't have hardly any money in the bank account. I'd never been to Australia. You know, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Booked a flight last minute after meeting someone for about 2 weeks online that invited me over, and learned really quickly that you need a jacket in Australia in July. It gets unbelievably cold there, and didn't pack one. So went there, and again, I saw the same thing of a lot of people being taken advantage of. And unfortunately, over there, historically, it's been Americans who relocated, and then it's if you're an American and you play basketball in a foreign country and you've played professionally, there's a mystique about you, and that's unfortunate because most of the people in America have no idea who these other players are around the world. But and most of them do it right, and most of them don't abuse it, but there definitely is some of that, and we ran into that as well. And again, it's just being authentic. It's being honest with people. It's telling them those things. So I went. We ended up growing and spending quite a bit of time in Australia. partnering with the different state associations there. That kind of bled over into New Zealand. We ended up partnering with the national governing body there in New Zealand, and actually in a very short time, actually tripled the amount of Kiwis playing college basketball. It allowed me to forge some really great friendships. Actually, a guy who played in your pro system, Piro Cameron. He's kind of how we got into New Zealand. For those of you that are watching this that are basketballs and you don't know who Piro is, he's an absolute legend of a guy. Just got elected a couple years ago into the FIBA World Hall of Fame. He's the national team head coach for New Zealand, and he heard about what we were doing in Australia. Actually, got my number somehow and called me up one day and introduced himself and just said, "Hey, what can I do to get this for my home country and my people? What do we need to do?" And a lot of people don't know that story, but he's a big reason why a lot of athletes now have had those opportunities, and he's asked for no credit. Actually the opposite. He didn't want his name out there and attached to it, but he and I have become really, really close friends. But from there, relationships that forged into meeting people like the Minister of Education in Shanghai, China, and partnering with a group there, and so many different things. And again, it's just treating people right. It's said a lot in business, but under promise and over deliver. I'm not afraid to tell you that I'm not going to do that we're going to do business, and I want you to expect nothing, because I know what I'm capable of and I know how good I am. So then when things happen and things work out, I look like a hero, and everybody wins. So it's just being authentic. It's treating people right. Um, again, it all sounds cliche, but that's what it is. More people deserve more honesty, and I know there's a lot of coaches that are going to watch this, and this kind of ties into business, right? We see a lot of parents get upset or they get frustrated. Well, you told me if my son came and played at your club, this and this and this and this and this was going to happen. When in reality, that's called recruiting. And I don't need to recruit you. I didn't recruit you and tell you how great I was as a human being so that you would be my friend. In reality, I told you about all my flaws and mistakes and my checkered past and all of these different things. And then I allowed my behavior to show you that that's what it was. And a lot of times I think coaches get caught into this. If I tell you whatever you want to hear, I'll get you here and then we'll be okay. Well, it's really hard to discipline somebody that you told them that they could walk on water for the last 6 weeks. So when you're here, so whether it's a university coach, whether it's a club coach, these athletes, even though it may cost you championships and you may cost you wins, these athletes deserve way more honesty. And listen, I'm not saying you're outright blatantly just misleading people, but if you want to come play for my club, I'm a jerk. I'm an a-hole. I'm going to yell. I'm going to run you. You're not going to like me. I'm not here to be your friend. That's the conversation that should be had, not the conversation that's typically had.
Okay, okay. Well, look, that's a really good segue, and just gonna let everybody know that normally this is a 30-minute show. We kind of agreed, Shane and I agreed a few days ago that this probably wasn't going to be a 30-minute show. Um, but what we will do is we will probably go for an hour, and then we're definitely going to have Shane back, because even if it's just you and me, Shane. I mean, I think the other morning I woke up real early to come and get some work done before my kids were awake, and I noticed that you were on Instagram Live, and for about 10 minutes it was just you and I, because you weren't even really expecting to connect with anybody at that time.
Correct.
But I love having these conversations. We had a great conversation on Instagram Live,
Absolutely.
just you and I. So we'll keep going. We'll keep going. But what you were just saying
Absolutely.
about kind of behavior and about being honest and integrity, that kind of leads us nicely into the kind of the guided conversation that I wanted to have this evening with you, and it's really about the difference between hard work. And I know you are somebody that really understands hard work. I followed that journey of you, running custom college recruitment for all of those years. And I mentioned before, like you were always in a different time zone, and we I remember we met up about, I don't know, was it 3 years ago? And you
Yeah.
came over and you said, "Oh, I haven't seen my kids in this long. But my wife's amazing. I don't know how she's doing it. I'm not even going to see her for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks. I can't remember how
And she
long it
was
was."
pregnant. Yeah, she was pregnant and due in 6 or 8 weeks as well when you and I met. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know that you understand hard work, but what I want to talk about this evening is the difference between hard work and culture and philosophy. And we won't get to the end of it. There's not an end, but just share with me your thoughts about the importance of hard work. Let's start there, and then we'll see where we go.
Well, I think hard work is the basis of any of those things. Your culture, your leadership, any of that. If you don't work hard, none of those other things really matter because you're not because what hard work does, hard work puts you in a position to then get a little bit lucky and then execute on everything you've been building in that hard work. So, yes, am, have I gotten awards for being, an entrepreneur and all of these different things? Yes. Have I worked my face off and, traveled 100+ days out of the country every year and all those things? Yes. All of those things built something that became great, but it took luck, it took timing, and it took people like yourself in many different countries around the world seeing who I am as a person because you saw those things, but there's a lot of people who don't follow me on social media like you did, who just saw me show up in Australia, show up in New Zealand, show up in England, all of those different things. And you don't see the hard work, but you still respected our culture and who I was as a person. So I think hard work is you have it's a foundation, right? I'm sure you just watched the Michael Jordan, Last Dance, right? It's without the hard work, there is no Michael Jordan, there's no Bulls, there's no Last Dance. Regardless of the culture that was there, if he's not working harder than and there's things I noticed. So we're getting back to the basketball part of it. They show clips from practice, and maybe they just happened to show these certain clips, but he was leading every running drill and he was touching every line in the running drills. So that hard work, again, built that culture of, hey, if he's the best player in the world and he's doing this, I don't have an excuse and I don't have a choice.
Okay, so look, I'm a real believer, and I know it's such a cliche, but I'm a real believer that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So I absolutely agree that hard work is the starting point for success, luck. Like you just referred to being lucky, and it's funny because it's one of these things that when I work with parents, when I work with kids and players, and I hear them say, "Oh, that was so unlucky," and I say, "No, it's not unlucky. What you've got to understand is you can create luck, but unlucky is just lack of preparation. Like it's lack of effort, it's lack of intent. It's not. People aren't just unlucky. People don't. There's not somebody walking around handing out. Well, you'll be lucky and you'll be unlucky. No, it's a product of what do you put in that determines what you'll get out, and whether or not you're in the right place at the right time with the right tools to make something happen. That's luck. But you make it. It's of design, right?
Absolutely. I'll be honest. I think luck is one of those things that's one sided. It's either good or it doesn't exist. Meaning, bad luck. A lot of people could say I had a bad luck growing up and different decisions, and I'm luck. No, it's none of those things. Luck happened because time and opportunity met up because I worked really hard to put myself in that position. You had to be there at a certain time and another person had to be there and you had to see something, right? You know, we can debate all day what put that in place and what made that happen. But you're right. Bad luck. Here's the reason people sometimes harp on bad luck. Bad luck is also the same thing as fear, and bad luck is also the same thing as an excuse. And we've never lived in a greater time anywhere in the history of the world to where who you are, where you come from, what color your skin is, what country you come from, what language you speak, where there's no better time in the world because there's no more gatekeepers. And so this is why I love what you're talking about is there are no more gatekeepers. You don't have to have think about it 20 years ago if you wanted to play college basketball and you lived in the UK. There were only a certain number of people that could make a phone call and get you there. If you want to be a musician 20, 30 years ago, Ed Sheeran may never exist. But now there's no gatekeepers. Now you can put out your own music. You can go and you guys can do this. It would have cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a production like this 15 years ago. And you don't have to do that because that hard work puts you in a position. And luck is just one of those words that's synonymously used for those things of time and opportunity. That's really what it is. Most people harp on the bad luck because of the failure that's associated with it. Ultimately, we say, I didn't win this, so I lost. I had bad luck, where bad luck, you actually had good luck. A loss is good luck. Failure is good luck. That means you can learn from something and you tried and you did something, which is way better than not having any luck at all.
Hey, look, that's a great one. I'm a big believer in that. Some of the most successful people are the people who learned to fail the quickest. People who weren't afraid of failing and realized that they had to do that. And this is a shout out to my team for every game that you think we lost this year. That's just me not being afraid to take some chances, to take some risks, making some mistakes, and holding my hand up at the end of the day, saying, yeah, I dropped the ball, but I'm going to learn from that every single time. So yeah,
If I would have used if I would have used my first experience traveling out of the country and my first interaction with the national governing body, which was there in the UK, it would have made me afraid to not go to Australia, New Zealand, Belgium, all these China, all these different places. And it's funny. So kind of tying in the dad part of it, so my youngest daughter, we actually have a mantra that we go through. I mean, here she's got this dad who's 6'5" and he's a big, loud, strong, burly guy. And now I've got a beard, so I guess that adds to it. But we have this mantra of going through life, and sometimes in his kids they get defeated or something is a loss, and we actually run it through her, and she actually appreciates me sharing this in hopes that other kids can kind of learn from it too. But we go through this thing and I'll say, what are you? And she'll say big. And I'll say, what are you? And she'll say strong. And I'll say, what can you do? Oh, and I'll say, what are you? And she'll say smart. And I'll say, what can you do? And she'll say anything. So she's went through this. I mean, every morning before school when she was little, every day. And now you'll hear her she'll come into the room and she'll be talking about doing something that you're like, what are you talking about? And then she's like, well, dad says I can do anything. But that's the mentality. That's the mentality in that culture of she knows what hard work is. She's seen it every day of her life. But also know that the losses are good. Those losses are good. If you were afraid of a loss, and ultimately, and I'm glad we're on this because this hopefully ties into other pieces that you want to talk about. But most people are afraid of losing because fear of judgment. So fear of judgment keeps other people. I don't want to be seen at zero. CJ, I don't know if you should start a podcast. Who's going to watch it, who follows. You only had 10 listens the first time you did it. Well, if you listen to those people, then no one would ever do anything. right? So that's that saying of a skilled sailor doesn't earn his skills sitting on the sand, right? You got to go out and you got to rough the rough water, and you've got to do it. And to me, that's where the joy and beauty of life is. That is where the real meat and potatoes of life, to where you actually really can enjoy things. You really get to experience. I'm blessed that I had a horrible childhood. I'm blessed that I had all these different things happen to me in my life, because they allowed me not to fear anything or anybody, and put me in a position to where now I can only have good luck. I can only have, if you tell me something's not, I fail every day. You actually lose more times in life than you ever win. So you might as well get comfortable with it and start learning from it.
Amen. Amen. So the reason I wanted to start with hard work is because, let's say we've got a group of people who all want to work hard. So this year, I've been really fortunate. I've worked with a group of athletes, all wanted to work hard. They were committed to working hard. Yeah, maybe some needed a bit of encouragement or cajoling, but then that's your job, right? As one of my previous coaches said, one of the previous guests on the show said, I think it was Coach Carl Brown, whose birthday it was yesterday. So Coach, if you're listening, happy birthday. And if you're not listening, why aren't you listening? But he,
Absolutely.
he talked about, the coach's job being to steer the bus. And sometimes you need to steer the bus so that people remember that, it is hard work. What we're doing isn't easy, but that's kind of why we're doing it. Like, it takes a special kind of moron to want to put themselves through what it takes to be your very best. Like, you have to accept that not everybody wants to do what we're doing, whether it's being a player, being a coach, being an official, running a business, being an entrepreneur. Not everybody is made to do that, but you have to start with hard work. But then hard work only takes you so far. So I've got kids who work really hard, and yet sometimes they don't reach their goals. And my my response to them is, you're working really hard, but you've got no direction. You've got no philosophy that is able to take advantage of this ability that you have to work hard. And whether that ability is innate, whether it was, whether it's your upbringing, whether it's because you read a lot of books and you realize that hard work is the key. Hard work without direction, hard work without a plan, hard work without culture, without philosophy, isn't enough to get you where you want to be. It definitely isn't enough to make you lucky or be in the right place at the right time or be in a position to take advantage of your skills, God given or otherwise. So talk to me about your philosophy. What, because there are other guys out there, Shane, that have worked hard. There are other guys out there that are 6 foot, come from Kentucky, that have had tough lives, that can work hard, but they haven't achieved what you've achieved. And I don't mean like you're better than them. I just mean you wanted to achieve something and you've got there. They might have wanted to achieve something and either not got there or still don't think they can get there or have got lost on a tangent somewhere. So yeah, talk to me about your philosophy.
So I think there's two pieces to that. I think one of them is you have to have an innate sense of self-awareness. You have to know who you are, right? Brad Stevens, I'm sure, loved basketball and was willing to sit in the gym all day long, 7 days a week and practice. But Brad Stevens wasn't going to go play in the NBA. Now he's the head coach of the Celtics because he probably had some self-awareness and said, wait a second, I really understand the game, but physically, God did not give me the ability, no matter how hard I work, and that's the thing. Like, you and I can say, you and I can go train like Usain Bolt every day for the next 6 years. We're not going to beat Usain Bolt. God did not give, I'm not built to be a sprinter, right? So it's my self-awareness to know who I am. So you have to have that self-awareness. It's like being an entrepreneur. I actually just gave one of my guys a book. It's called Leading from the Shadows. And it's how a lot of people don't understand that being the number two. Let me put it to you this way. Do you know who the number 4 hired employee was at Facebook? Do you know his name? No idea. He's a billionaire and no one knows who he is. He got all the reward from everything and none of the stress and none of the criticism and none of it. So people like that are self-aware to know there are way more number 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s than there are number 1s. And you have to have a sense of self-awareness to know, yes, you're right. I can go out here every day and run every day, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be in basketball shape. That doesn't mean, so I have to have leadership or a sense of awareness to know that there's certain things that I have to do. So if you're not a number 1, then you have to find that leadership. You have to find those skill sets that someone can guide you on. And then, you know, with the self-awareness, if the self-awareness isn't there, then you're going to struggle no matter how hard you work, because we all think, I legitimately thought I was Michael Jordan playing basketball at 11 years old. But I wasn't Michael Jordan, right? So, you know, if we don't have that, you know, something's got to click. And I think that self-awareness is a huge piece of that. It's a huge piece of it.
So you got leadership, you got self-awareness. Um, in your company, you had a pretty small team, right?
For the most part, yes.
You know, what would you say? What would you say in terms of, moving from the philosophy side of things to creating a culture where that business could exist? Like I don't know. Did you take a day off in the 10 years that you worked at CCR?
So uh eventually I did. So I can give you some context to that. So for the first 4.5 years of running the business, I didn't pay myself a dollar. I worked 18-hour days, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. And I literally did not pay myself anything. So no money whatsoever going into my household. Then, you know, after that, obviously, yes. I was never the highest paid employee in my own business, um, because I believe that you take care of the people around you that help you build something. Again, there's culture there, right? There's culture of I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to ask you to do anything that that I won't do. None of my staff ever had to fix the plumbing or a toilet in the office if there was ever an issue. I did. They'll tell you multiple times, wherever our offices were, you'd come in and I'm standing there in water with, elbow deep into into a toilet. So it's setting that culture of, hey, yes, there's hard work, but even when we traveled, and I don't say any of this to brag. I'm just giving context so people can understand how I did things. Did I take time off? I didn't. Um, should I probably have? Hindsight, yes. Physically, I should have. Um, but that's because I come from a life and a childhood of where everybody told me, from adults in my life to parents to whoever, I wouldn't be anything. I'd be a drug dealer, a drug addict, or a garbage man. So I knew school wasn't right for me. So me to look at a book and sit and learn is really hard for me. But I'm aware, so I stick my hands in. It may take me 3 times as long, but I can figure out more than the average person. So that hard work is inherently in me, even when I know I'm focused. So now it leads to overwork and, you know, probably a little bit of addiction of work and those kind of things. But you gotta have some balance. You gotta have some culture within there for sure.
Okay, so we've kind of we've kind of we started with hard work. We've talked a bit about kind of having a philosophy, definitely having a plan. Um, we massively talked about self awareness, being so important. You just mentioned focus. Tell me a bit about your focus. Tell me about the role that focus played in not just the journey to CCR, but I want us to get to kind of life post CCR. So tell me about the focus getting to that point where you felt this is the company that I want, but now I'm ready for something else.
Yeah. So the focus during CCR, while it might have seemed in, it's celebrated in today's entrepreneurial world of, grind your face off, all of these different things. It got to a point to where my focus was so directed. I was only sleeping every other day. I was sleeping for 4 or 5 hours at a time. My schedule was all the way mixed up because of dealing with people in the UK and in Australia. So you're talking about 18-hour time, 20-hour time differences. Um, so while I was hyper focused and I was locked in, what I wasn't focused on was myself and my own mentals and my own health and my family and all of those different things. And it's unfortunately um, it's it's a byproduct of being successful. Kind of going back to Michael Jordan, um, you know, um, you know, he was worried about how he would come off. I don't. There's no judgment that comes from me of seeing him be a certain way. One, we're talking about grown men here who get paid millions of dollars to play a game, so it's okay if you get yelled at. I got no problem with that. Um, but it's in that, like, it's a like I worked really hard and I had super focus, but in CCR, hindsight, it probably wasn't the healthiest thing. So when it came time for CCR to kind of wind down, there were different reasons that came about. We came off a record year, all these different things, but it was just time. It was time. Hindsight is that's even more clear now than ever. It was just time, and to a different kind of focus. Now you take a guy who literally was out of the country 100 days a year to now all of a sudden he's sitting at home with no office to go to, no employees to sit down and help, no kids to talk to and mentor, none of these things. So now I've had to learn a completely new focus. But what that has done is it's given me time to focus. Even more relevant now, the last 2 or 3 months, everybody in the world's been forced into this thing called quarantine. And the reality of it is, people like me see so much beauty in what's about to come out of this, no matter how ugly and hard and difficult and financially taxing and all these different things it seems. This is some of the best music that we'll ever hear will come out of this. Some of the big, I actually just heard a stat. Over 50% of the Fortune 500 companies were all started in what's called a bear market with the stock market or in a recession. So hard times this is where that hard work kicks in, because now you've got to do that, but also your focus and your self-awareness to realize, hey, I actually have something here worth focusing and worth putting my hard work on. But in it's energy, right? So a space shuttle is taking off in an hour and a half with SpaceX and NASA to send people into outer space. There's a lot of energy that it takes to put that there, but it takes a lot of focus and a lot of self-awareness of what actually has to happen so that you can narrowly put that energy in a very small space and keep it there for a very long distance to achieve something that most people have, in the history of the world, never thought was possible. So you've got to have those things, and they all align. And I applaud you for bringing those things up, because most people they only focus. Shane, you worked like crazy. You were doing these things, but there's way more to it than just sitting down and working 18 hours a day. Way more, way more.
Hey, sorry, I lost you a little bit, and also I got distracted by the very real life studio that I work in, which is
It's
my little
okay.
daughter. My little daughter is obviously having a tough time before bed. But anyway, I want to kind of keep on going because culture to me is like one of the most important things in terms of kind of setting my stall out for the beginning of the season. So when I look at what we want to achieve over the next 12 months, I'm very focused on going back and reflecting on, did we have the right culture in place? And I look at culture and personnel way before I look at tactics, in terms of our overall game plan. And for me, philosophy and creating a culture of success and performance is super important. So I'm always really keen to talk to other people who I've seen doing the work and making creating culture and utilizing sorry Siri, and utilizing culture to to drive them in a particular direction and to achieve a certain goal. And one of the reasons I ask you is because I'm aware that your time at CCR has some really great highs in terms of what you achieved, in terms of the number, not just the number of countries, but the number of individual kids and parents who you brought immense value to. And to see you have achieved all of that, and speaking in countries all over the world, something that back in 2009, I don't think that was on your radar at that time. I think
No.
your idea was quite small and pure in terms of, I think I can help some people. I don't know if at that time you ever thought, do you know what, I'm going to create a global business. I'm going to be an international speaker. I'm going to be on the cusp of, from somebody who doesn't like reading, or doesn't have a great affinity for reading, to become an author. Um,
Mm-hmm.
these things, they don't come out of just working hard. They come out of starting to create some kind of culture and philosophy that makes that hard work do the right things. And I'm literally writing a list of things I'll be posting over the next few days. Some of these kind of nuggets that you're mentioning, but I want to talk about, before we finish the show. And we've got about 7 minutes left tonight. This won't be the last time we have this conversation, but just talk to me about life after CCR. So you've had have you had 18 months off?
Round about there, roughly that. Yeah.
Okay, and you're about to. We started talking about it the other day, and you're about to start a new venture. Tell me not just about about the new venture, but tell me what you learned from the last venture that is going to drive you to maybe get some of that balance in the new adventure.
Yeah. So the new initiative that I'm starting, with a couple really cool people that have kind of taken the CCR journey with me as well. Some of those same people are still with me, which I think speaks both volumes of them and of me, and kind of how we do things, that we're still kind of trudging along, but accepting the challenges. So accepting the challenges is going to be um, a Facebook based community that is for adults, coaches, parents, adoptive parents, step parents, foster parents, educators, anyone who works with today's youth, who are dealing with things ironically very similar to what I dealt with at a young age, whether it's different forms of abuse or trauma or neglect or financial hardships or poverty or ADHD or all of these different things that so many of these kids are going through. Even this whole quarantine thing, your daughter is, she doesn't know what she's going through, but having dad at the house all day, every day for 3 months is traumatizing to her. It's a change in her world. It's a change, in her routine, and that community is going to be built of all those types of people from all different parts of the world. That will come together, and I'm going to share a lot of my stories and my journey on some different things. I am, as you mentioned, I'm in the process of also writing a book. I won't release the title yet, but it's definitely in the works, revolving around all of this, so that because therapy is one of those things as well that's, it gets stigmatized in different cultures and different ethnicities or different different demographics of, you shouldn't go or you're weak or these different things. So this isn't meant to take the place of therapy for some of these adults. It's meant to give them, because I never really went to therapy until probably 18 months ago when I closed down CCR. I wanted to give it a try and work through some of the things that I was going through and closing down a business. And in that will be, we'll have you on, and you can, I want you to be able to share some of your, different experiences, good and bad, and how they shaped you and how you got past those, so that these people that are working with these absolute beauties of humans, and that's our youth, um, and they can maybe learn something. I can't do public speaking right now for obvious reasons, but I'm looking to start speaking in schools and speaking to both students, and I'm absolutely going to be looking you up and figuring out how we can do a 2 or 3 week tour across schools in the UK, and those different things, to where I want to create a community for those adults that fit that demographic, to be able to show youth who are going through things that most people will cast you off to society about, or label you or stigmatize you about, that you can use those things as motivators and catalysts in life, in business, and in sports. And that's, in a nutshell. I could talk for hours about it because it's something I'm super, super passionate about. Because my wife works with students who are emotional behavior disability kids and learning behavior disability kids. I was one of those kids. While I wasn't put in separate classes, I was labeled these different things because I didn't fit into a box. And quite frankly, screw the box. I'm gonna be my own person and be who I am. But I'm willing to have that self awareness, and I'm willing to work extra harder because I know that that's going to close off some opportunities for me. So that, in a nutshell, is I've been able to lock in and focus. And the next stage of my life is to do more of the things to help people even more of a way. That was my motivation with CCR, is to help create opportunities for young adults. I think we've done that. We've established a lot of these pipelines and different things in different countries that still exist, even though we're not doing. We've opened up the eyes and the doors, and we've done all that. But now I want to get in to the grassroots part of it and say, look, I'm a flawed, screwed up guy who had all these things, and not woe is me. Let me show you how I use those things and flipped them and turned them and made them, a superpower for me to be successful. And that's really where the motivation comes for the next stage of kind of what I'm doing with accepting the challenges. And you can find the group on Facebook. I'll send you guys the link so you guys can join and be a part as well.
Excellent. Well, look, that really neatly rounds up a kind of 60-minute kind of show, which for us is like an extended show. But honestly, I think there was so much value in tonight's show in terms of, talking about kind of your experience and your journey through, a number of years. And I know that we didn't even touch on 1% of some of the stories that we've shared before, and
Sure.
I'm really excited and humbled by the opportunity to kind of collaborate with you on your new project, and I'm really keen to be involved. So yeah, I think we'll continue to kind of work together and reciprocate, and hopefully we'll get to share a pizza and a beer again. I think I owe you a pizza this time. So
Fair.
maybe once lockdown's over as well, we can talk about me coming to you instead of you always coming here. That would be great.
You and your family are more than welcome. We've got couches and beds, and it's something that's not said much in different reasons. But you've always been massively supportive of me and anybody around me. So I want you to know I not only appreciate that, but I love you as a human being for that. And you and Rupert, who's helping you out with this, but you really, really deserve and I know you don't do it for that, but you deserve some kudos for what you're trying to do because I see what you're doing without you saying what you're doing. And it's a really, really positive thing to try and help so many people. So you might be humbled and honored. I'm absolutely humbled and honored myself that you think enough of me as a human being and how I've carried myself, but also the things that I've accomplished and overcome that are valuable enough for other people. So that means the world to me, CJ, and I love you and I appreciate you for that.
Thanks, Shane. That really means a lot, and actually, that's made me feel a bit emotional because firstly, I definitely accept the offer of a bed or a couch. I've got to say that having spent 9 weeks with my daughters, 24 hours a day, I'm quite happy to come on my own and just maybe have a little kind of holiday on my own. But thank you. I'm sure
Come
they'll
on over.
appreciate the extended offer. Thank you so
We'll
much
we'll
for the
we'll send
time you've taken. Go
absolutely. We'll
on.
send some good gifts and some candy over with you back, so it'll make up for it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time this evening. Like I say, this obviously won't be the last time that we share some stories and some thoughts. And take care out there. I know you guys are going through pretty much the same as we are right now, and we obviously hope for a return back to a new normal. I don't think we're ever going to go back to the normal that we had, and that's not a bad thing. Your point about the number of kind of opportunities and invention and the growth of new ideas and innovation that come out of tough situations, that is so true. At the same time, we're all very kind of cognizant of all those people that unfortunately have lost their lives, and that's a tough price to pay for any future kind of development in life and in kind of human advancement. So, our thoughts remain with those people who have lost their lives and the families that have lost their lives as well. But, in the meantime, we're going to do what we can to keep our spirits high and keep sharing. And hopefully, everybody who's listening and who's not listening, hopefully, they get some value from all the people who have decided to take to the internet and just, reach out a hand and hopefully connect with somebody from around the world and share stories. So thank you, Shane. Thank you, Rupert. Again, Rupert's always there in the background. Um, we thank you all so much for listening and tuning in kind of every week, and we'll continue to keep bringing you kind of interesting, hopefully, and engaging content. Everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Good night.